Have you ever heard of Dewayne Belew? He's a Clevelander, and he's the chairman of the American Cancer Society and very interested in the Relay for Life. It's going to be a great discussion.
Sort of that connection between Germany and France. The old spelling.
The old spelling, Belew.
That's exactly right, yeah.
So I guess you'd be French.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
And you've been in Cleveland since in the 80s?
I started at Bradley Hospital in 1988.
Bradley Memorial. What was your job there?
When they hired me, I was the director of marketing and public relations, and when I left, I was the chief operating officer. I tell my family it's because they never could find quite a fit for me.
I bet you know my mother.
Your mother is one of the sweetest people I've ever known.
So
in my
you
life.
knew her?
Juanita and
I know her, yeah.
We worked together for a long time. She is, when I think about genteel Southern women,
That's
Juanita
her.
is always in that category for me. She was kind and sweet and friendly and helpful and just devoted to people to a fault.
Oh yeah.
And I really, every time I see her, I have a better day.
You know, isn't that something? It's a small world. I just ate lunch over there.
Did you?
Now, how in the world? What are the odds?
Pretty low, probably.
My wife worked there, Tamala Hethcox at the time.
Yeah.
She was in the cafeteria or something.
Cafeteria. Yeah.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
I was there for a long time, and I love the work of Bradley Hospital. I believed in the mission. I admired the people, regardless of what department they worked in. They were all just really devoted to doing what they could do best to take care of patients and families. I've been a very fortunate man in terms of that experience at Bradley Hospital. Not everybody gets to enjoy something like that in their life where they get up in the morning and they're just thrilled about being able to go to work.
Yeah, very few.
I got up every morning. I was thrilled about going to work because I knew I was going to be a part of something that was a whole lot bigger than me. It's like going to your church. We ought to feel like we're a part of something that's much bigger than us, but we're a little bitty part of it.
What made you be that type of person?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, other than I'll say I had a mom and dad who I will say this, they were not regular church-going people, but they believed in God through their own way. And we went to vacation Bible school. We'd go to service on a regular basis, but they weren't the every Sunday type. But they were hardworking people. They loved their kids. I have a brother and a sister, both younger than me, and my grandparents. On my dad's side, they were hard scrabble farmers at best. Sometimes I just call them tenant farmers.
Yeah.
Lived in a house way out in the country in North Alabama. Didn't have indoor plumbing. No, nothing to speak of except dirt. But people of good character. They would the proverbial statement about they'd give you the shirt off their back. They'd give you the shirt off the back, and my granny'd fix you homemade cat head biscuits. And then on my mom's side, my daddy Bailey worked at a chemical factory in Mount Pleasant, Tennessee for as long as I could remember. And that was way back before OSHA, anybody else. And he smoked
Lucky Strikes.
Non-filtered Camel cigarettes. So he was getting a dose of it
I bet,
24 hours a day. But, I have to give credit to my family first and foremost. And God's put people in my life throughout the years, friends and people that I just call brothers and sisters. they've helped me learn some life lessons.
Where were you raised until the 80s?
I was actually raised in Columbia, Tennessee, just south of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad transferred jobs. He worked at the time as a manager for the Nashville Banner in Tennessean, distribution manager. And he transferred to Lewisburg, Tennessee. And I moved there when I was a freshman in high school.
Is that where the Amish community is?
In Lawrenceburg.
Lawrenceburg,
In Lawrenceburg.
yeah.
And that's where I was born, the Amish community right there in Lawrenceburg.
Is
yeah.
that right? I've been there.
Yeah,
So you were
yeah.
born in the community?
I was born in Lawrenceburg, not in the Amish community, but it's just a little bit north of where the city of Lawrenceburg is. Yeah.
I've got 2 baskets they made.
I've
in
got
there.
I've got a porch swing at my house that was made by the Amish people.
Well,
right
they can
there in
make
Lawrence
stuff,
County.
can't they?
Yes, sir. They're
And they're German descent.
They are carpenters and hard-working people. Yeah,
They just live, don't they? They just want to live.
they do. They do. They don't look for trouble. They just want to take care of their families and worship in their own way. And,
Yeah.
and be in touch, if you will, with their piece of land. And but they can grow some vegetables. They can make some canned goods. I grew up on a lot of that stuff. We always tried to shop with them when we could.
I stopped and talked to one for a little while, and he believes just like I do as far as religion. I didn't see any difference.
Yeah, I think we could talk about that probably on a different subject, but lots of us, we create these human barriers between faith, and I think if we could just sit down and have conversations like this,
That's right.
We're not looking to create a problem. Let's just talk about it.
That's
Have a cup of coffee or a soft drink, whatever, and then walk away from it.
People do that still, but it's almost like they're trying to see which side you're on of some sort, whether it be religion or politics or schools or, who cares? Let's just live, right?
I think you're absolutely right. We seem to have this. We seem to be antagonistic toward people quite often.
Yeah.
We're looking to trap them or trick them into something that makes them look, unflattering or illogical or maybe even stupid. And I don't really understand that because I don't know what you gain by doing that to someone else.
I don't know either, unless it's just more or less a habit.
I think some of these things are learned. We're not talking about social media. But when you can write or produce messages that are negative toward either an individual or a collective of people, and then you don't have to sign your name to it.
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, that's a cowardly way of going about it. If you want to say something bad about me, that's okay, say it. But be willing to put your name on it.
Boy, people say stuff on social media that they would never say to a person in the face, wouldn't they?
I certainly hope that's true. I certainly hope that's
good
true.
grief, you'd start more fights. It'd be crazy.
You absolutely would, yes.
And I miss the days of the Banner where you get your news. Just something about reading the newspaper.
Oh, amen. I grew up. My first job at 11 years old was delivering the Columbia Daily Herald newspaper. And at 11 years old, I delivered it sometimes on my bicycle. And I remember one time it snowed, and they still brought my newspapers to my pickup spot, and I pulled them around on my red sled and put them in mailboxes or up on the porch. And I delivered newspapers, the Nashville Banner in Tennessee, and the Banner was the afternoon newspaper, and the Nashville Tennessean was the morning. So I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and deliver the morning newspaper, and then the afternoon I'd deliver the afternoon newspaper.
How long did you do that?
Oh, I probably did that. Well, I delivered newspapers from the time I was 11 until I graduated high school, most of the time. And on Sunday, when I was old enough to have a car at 16, I delivered the Sunday morning newspaper. So on Saturday night, earlier, they'd bring down what we call the inserts, the Parade magazine, sale papers, et cetera, thing like that. And then later, they'd bring down the headlines, the front pages of sports, et cetera. And you'd be at a big old table, much like we're sitting at, and you'd insert your newspapers. And then I'd load all those up in the back seat or the front seat of my car. I had a route of about 400 customers. And so I'd take off, and I'm either putting them in mailboxes or wrapping a big old strong rubber band, pitching out in the driveway. Sunday was a pretty heavy day. But
Not to mention rain with the plastic bags.
oh, plastic bags, yes, sir. But to your point about, I think that's part of why I grew up loving newspaper. I love that the cracking open of the newspaper,
The smell.
much like a book. You know, I read books on Kindles and I read them on other electronic devices, but there's not quite that tactile feeling of cracking it open and getting that smell, that rush that goes up your nose. But you're right, newspapers, getting the black ink on your hands. I miss those days. I'm an old guy in some ways.
I guess young people don't even know what we're talking about.
I suspect that's right. I've got a daughter who's going to get married May 25th to a young man here in town, Nate Harrell, and they don't know about, you know, newspapers, despite the fact that I talk to them the same way I have you, and I've got a son at UTK, going to graduate and be a teacher next year. But newspapers in the form that you and I are talking about, you know, it used to be much like you had a quarter in your pocket or a dime, and you could find a phone booth.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, you had a quarter, you could go around almost any corner and put your quarter in, buy you a newspaper, right? Try to find those today.
Or even they'd drop it on the ground and pick up the...
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I learned to throw out the passenger window. I could toss it across the top of my car and put it on your porch for you.
Now, what time would they bring the inserts on Sunday nights?
The Saturday delivery of the inserts, sometimes it'd be late Saturday afternoon or early Saturday evening, and offload those in our work area. And then usually about midnight or 1 a.m. they get there with the front section, you know, the headlines and the last news that they could print. And like I said, we'd insert those, and then you load them in your car.
Wouldn't that take an hour or 2 hours?
It would take a little while, yeah, depending on how big your route was. And we had routes of different sizes, and there were several of us. But it'd take me a little while.
Boy,
and
that's just awful, nearly, isn't it?
Well, you know, I look back on it, but sometimes I didn't want to be up at that time.
No, what if you had a sore throat or something?
Well, you still had newspapers to deliver, because back in the day, not unlike today of people who still subscribe, but I'll tell you, my customers, they expected that newspaper to be on time and where they wanted it. Now, most people back in that day, they were very kind about it. Put it in my mailbox, put it on the on my driveway. But I had a few customers. They wanted it up on their front porch. They were elderly. They wanted it up on the front porch, so they didn't have to walk far. And that's what you did back at the time. Back when I delivered the Columbia Daily Herald, not only did you deliver it, but you had these little receipt books. And once a week, you'd have to go around, knock on the door.
Golly, all that work.
You'd collect that money. Oh yeah, it was. But I learned a lot, and you know, I reflect on that. And for me now, there's a great old Jimmy Buffett song called "We Do It for the Stories We Can Tell."
Yeah.
And my friends will tell you, I love people's stories. I'm curious about people. I try not to be nosy, but I'm curious about how people got into their profession or their career or their job, and if they've been there very long, did you intend to stay? Or did you simply stay because you stayed long enough to go, well, I got 2 weeks vacation now. I got 3 weeks vacation now. I'm just going to stay. And so a lot of people, they just stay after that.
I'm more interested in the why. Why people did stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I'm critical. I'm just curious as the why. Should I have that why? I guess I'm thinking.
Absolutely. I think what we were talking about earlier, I enjoy people telling me their story as much as they want to tell. I'm not looking for anything that's private or that would be embarrassing, but I love to hear how people became engaged in something and then why they just stayed with it or why they bounced around. Either one's okay with me.
Do you think that ultimately we're trying to solve our own questions by asking them theirs? Not that it's a related thing, but somebody might say, for instance, I was going through a real bad burnout one time, and I asked this guy, I said, he was really wealthy, and he didn't need to work. And I said, you ever get burned out? And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you do? And he said, well, you just look at your kids. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, just look at your kids. And I said, I don't understand. He said, I'm telling you, just look at your kids. So I guess is there a reason to do it after maybe you need to quit because you looked at them and they need you to help them. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I guess that was the reason. That was the why.
Yeah, and I think we all, at least from my perspective, everybody has to figure it out. Why, why do you do certain things? Was it because of your upbringing? Was it because of a family thing? Was it because you looked at your children and said, I want my children to have more.
Right.
I want them to have something different. And people are motivated by different things, whether it's laughter or fear. The old thing we like to talk about, we've heard it so many times in our life, the carrot and the stick.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the rod off the corner, the bush at the corner of the porch. And sometimes, well, if you'll do this, you'll get an ice cream sandwich. Whatever it might be, we're motivated by different things. And I don't necessarily think any of those are bad. I know some people would say some are better than others, and that's probably true. But, we're just individuals. We got to sort of at some point, we got to figure stuff out for ourselves.
Yeah, boy, that's scary, isn't it?
It is. But it's a big old beautiful world. And if we can keep from being too distracted too often, and we talk about this at my Sunday school class from time to time. The road is the road ahead of us is not always flat and straight.
And it's generally not eternal, as far as this decision I'm getting ready to make is I'm going to be involved with it for 6 months a year, 3 months a year, but it's not 5 years.
Right.
And that sometimes is refreshing.
It is, because sometimes in life you can feel like you've become, trapped into a situation, and there may be a period of time when you are, but if I was telling somebody the other day, if we're in the middle of a situation that's really tough on us, if we can figure out a way to take a few breaths, clear our minds, think just a little bit, quite often an opportunity will present itself to make it a little bit better. It may not solve everything, but we can figure out how to make it a little bit better. At
least you can get a plan, and with a plan you can deal with it a little bit better.
I agree.
And then you can look to now that I've got a plan, when this is over, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You should have been a psychologist.
No. I am very thankful for what the Lord has allowed me to do so far. He gifted me in ways that I need to be more thankful. He's given me 2 wonderful children that I love dearly and I'm very proud of. He surrounded me with friends and family that I love beyond measure. And in my professional world and the things that I get to do from a charitable cause, I'm thankful for all those. I've been a guy who has more than most people, and I'm thankful for it. I probably don't appreciate it as often as I should, but I try to remind myself I should appreciate it more.
Do you have a full-time job now?
I do. I work for a company based in Nashville called Path Group, and it's a national laboratory company. When I left Bradley Memorial Hospital in 2005, I went to work for Path Group in the fall of that year. So I've been there right at 19 years this year. I'm assistant vice president of operations. My kids sometimes, still ask me, "What does that mean, Dad?" And basically means that I need to understand what the company's mission is and how we're going to go about supporting and advancing that mission. So I get to work with pathologists and I get to work with staff and technicians and other professionals. Part of my job is to interview and hire really smart people. They're a whole lot smarter than I am in their particular line of work. But I do have a certain knack for being able to judge people. I don't mean that in a harsh way, but evaluate people in terms of, are they going to fit in and be able to do the job that needs to be done within the collective of our company so we can support more patients and help our clients and advance the cause of our company. So I've been doing that. I've been doing that a long time. I've got hospitals that I work with and clients that I work with in Virginia and Tennessee and down into Georgia. And
so your company's the one they send the lab work off to get the results.
Yeah, if I go in and have something, if I go to Tenova Healthcare or Erlanger or Park Ridge, and they remove something from my skin or I have my appendix out, they're going to send that specimen to my company, Path Group, and we're going to evaluate it and
the blood work.
And we do a whole lot of the clinical lab
Blood
testing.
panels and
yeah,
stuff.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but again, those are highly trained professionals, and I always claim I'm not one of them, but I'll try to make sure they have the right equipment, the right facilities in which to work, the right budget in which to do their job, the right inventory, so that the patient can get their results through their physician, and we know and they can figure out a proper treatment plan, whether it's surgical or pharmaceutical, whatever it might be. But we play a role in that. Through the people we hire, we play a role in that.
And you're not the guy doing it. So you would know it. You would know what you're looking at.
No, sir, and I am very thankful that I admire the people who do it. I watch them do these testing techniques from time to time, and I enjoy talking to them because I always learn a great deal from them. But I'm good. I'm good being home, pulling out a splinter, putting on a Band-Aid. Back in the old days, we put on mercurochrome.
Yeah.
I don't know you do that much.
Was that the red stuff?
The red stuff?
Yeah,
and you blow,
or purple sort
and you're
of.
blowing it because it's
Yeah,
hot.
yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Wonder if that helped a lot. I guess it did, didn't it?
Well, my mom and dad would swear by it, but I don't know that it did. But I'm still around, and I got lots of scrapes and cuts and bruises when I was a kid.
I bet I haven't seen anybody with mercurochrome on since what? 5 years old or 6 years old? I mean, it's a long time.
Probably. Yeah.
What took its place? I guess just alcohol or something?
I don't have any idea.
But
we
Neosporin maybe.
Probably. We've come a long way in terms of diagnostics
Yeah.
and treatments, whatever those might be. And again, that's for those really intelligent people who have been schooled and gained a lot of experience. I admire what they do. They are just cream of the crop, so to speak. They come in every day wanting to do what is absolutely best for the patient. Every single day they come in and want to do what's best for the patient.
Do you have a lab just in Nashville, or is there separate ones?
Well, we have labs in a lot of different places. Our biggest lab is in Nashville, but actually built a tissue processing lab in Chattanooga in 2006. So specimens from around here, we process there, and then we send those back by courier to the pathologist at Tonova and Erlanger and Park Ridge, up in Oak Ridge, and they look at your slide, and then they'll provide a diagnostic report to your personal physician or your surgeon, and then your surgeon or doctor will talk to you and say, here's what this report says, here's how we're going to treat it. And so that's sort of our role.
I've seen the cars drive around. They got pretty nice.
Yes.
Identifying cars.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a growing business. Despite the fact that we've come so far in terms of medical understanding through research and just experience and data evaluation, we still have a long ways to go across a whole spectrum of things in terms of diseases, including cancer that I'm actively involved with through the American Cancer Society.
Do you think there's new treatments for cancer coming along that I sort of feel like the next 10 years is not going to be as much in technology as it is in medical advancements?
There are some extraordinary things going on in the field of cancer research. And the American Cancer Society has been around for 110 years.
110 years.
So they have a long history of research and support of caregivers and support of survivors. But what we've seen over the last many years has just been great inroads into a better understanding. Cancer is the big umbrella. I'm not sure about this, but I think there are 200 or so different kinds of cancers that fall underneath that.
Yeah.
And many people know about those either from personal experience, either themselves or with their family or friends, somebody they go to church with, somebody they work with. There's another project going on. It's called the Moonshot, and I'm not an expert on it. It's called the Moonshot, and I sort of describe it this way. Back in the day when John F. Kennedy said, we're going to go to the moon by the end of the decade, right? Many people old enough remember that. And so by stating that, he brought together the best and the brightest, and they collaborated and worked on that project.
And did it.
And there's a project called Moonshot. You can look it up, Moonshot. I don't know if it's moonshot.com or just look up Moonshot Cancer. And it's much the same thing. It's trying to bring together the best and the brightest researchers, the best and the brightest doctors, the scientists and the doctors, to collaborate and to understand what's going on in the world of cancer fighting. How do we analyze it better? How do we diagnose it earlier? And then how do we treat it more effectively, either preemptively or after we diagnose it? And again, I'm not an expert in those areas, but I'm really excited about what they're doing in terms of bringing people together to share information. And then there's another one. During the Super Bowl, there was an advertisement from Pfizer, the giant international pharmaceutical company. And I think it's letsstopcancer.org or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact name, but if you look up Pfizer cancer advertisement, you can find it that way. And again, it's much the same way from a pharmaceutical industry perspective. What else can we do to better understand all of these different types of cancers? And then from a pharmaceutical perspective, what's our contribution? And despite the fact that cancer continues to be so devastating, so heartbreaking, so tragic, we have come so far, but we're not to the finish line yet. And that's part of the reason I and many others volunteer, is because, when people talk to me about cancer, I can tell you lots of different things, but for me, back to your question about why do I volunteer? My mom and dad both had cancer and they both died from it. I've had other family members die from cancer. As I said earlier, my daughter Rachel is 26 and my son Christopher is 22. And I would love one day, whether it's for them or their grandchildren, but I'd like it to be for them, where they'd say, I remember my dad talking about cancer. Let's look it up in a book.
What was it?
Exactly. And so we're not there yet. But like a lot of hard things in life, when we figure out how we can work together as individuals, and we can bring communities together and be like-minded and row the boat at the same pace in the same direction,
makes a big difference.
We can absolutely make progress. We fail to do that far too often, but we have a long history of being able to do that.
And now we have 110 years of, well, longer than that, but I guess of some cohesiveness of experience and stuff that they can look back on and build on. So maybe now's the time.
I'm very encouraged. Again, there's still a lot of work to be done, and a lot of that goes back to the same thing as is often the case. It's people and their dedication to it and clear thought, and then it's money. And those two quite often go hand in hand, because the resources that are provided, allow for better equipment, better technology, better training of people, so you can, in the football analogy, move that ball down the field.
Get a first down or something.
Exactly, because it's hard. It's not impossible, but it's hard to get a 99-yard touchdown in the fight against cancer. But you can get a first down, and then you can be encouraged, and then you work to get another first down.
It may be as simple as we found some new ways to better handle chemotherapy or immunotherapy or whatever.
I mean, think about in our lives how different it is today for a whole spectrum of diseases, whether it's for treatment or whether it's for diagnosis. We have made some extraordinary strides. Think about diabetes. Think about how much better we are in terms of management. We're not there yet, but think about how much better people who have diabetes, how much better are we today?
I don't see many people with limbs cut off like I used to. Remember that was a thing?
Yeah.
They had diabetes
Absolutely.
And now it's...
The surgical and pharmaceutical and other therapeutic interventions, we have come so far. We have work to do. But again...
I had this friend of mine about 3 years ago. I won't say his name. He's a really good friend of mine, and he got melanoma cancer, and he was dying. And I went out to his house, and he was on the living room. They'd made a sort of a makeshift couch for him, or a way for him to sleep. And I just told him, good friend, how he was and stuff. And so when I left, I thought, well, I've seen him for the last time. Well, he went out somewhere, Houston or somewhere, got on some kind of treatment. And I mean to tell you today, that's been 3 years ago, you wouldn't call him a name because he might whip you. I mean, he's just a regular guy now.
That's awesome.
And I saw it in real time. I didn't read about it. I didn't see it on TV. I saw it in real time. So things are getting better, as you said.
They absolutely are. And we have the capacity, we have the ability, and many people have the willingness. Mm-hmm. Somehow we just have to get other people involved to make these significant improvements that we're talking about.
Have you seen that thing where the futuristic things where they're, the way I understand it, they're going to clone yourself and let it grow at the same age as the same time you age, and then you've got replacement parts? I mean, it sounds like bizarre, but I've read on that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I watched the Jetsons.
Oh, yeah.
And I always thought, that is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Now, what you're talking about, I don't know if that's cool or not, because sometimes, in all candor, sometimes science allows us to do certain things, but we haven't figured out as humans, should we do those things? Sometimes we get a little bit ahead of ourselves, I think. Now, other people might disagree with me, but ethically and morally, we got to figure out, if we can do that, how do we do that properly?
Well, we got that too. On top of this money, smart people, volunteers, and does anybody have an issue with it ethically?
That's exactly right.
Hey, didn't I see a thing where George Jetson was like a year ago, and it might have been 2 years ago, where he would have been born today, like last year, and the futuristic. In other words, what they're doing, because they went back and looked at when the show was supposed to, time it was been,
right.
He was supposed to be born. So somewhere in the next 50 years, and there's not a whole lot on there that we haven't seen.
It's pretty remarkable. It was a fun cartoon when I was a kid. I always enjoyed it. And today it's like, how did they see the future so clearly?
It's like Star Trek. Hey, on the Jetsons, what was the dog's name?
Elroy? No, that was his son.
It was his boy Elroy.
That
his
was
boy
son,
Elroy.
Yeah, his boy Elroy. Oh,
Do you know Gwen?
You've stumped the band.
His boy. Was it Pluto?
No, that was in Disney.
Yeah.
Used to be a planet too, didn't it?
It used to be. I think maybe it still is. That messed a lot of horoscopes up, didn't it?
Messed a bunch of them up.
Yeah, Star Trek, we're just about doing everything on there with the cell phones, everything except, this transportation.
Right.
But boy, it's exciting times, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Me and you have seen we've seen the landlines, the invention of the microwave, the microwave.
Yeah, it's the things that have changed in our lives. So many for the better, and some I'm not sure of, but I probably take advantage of many of them.
You see some of these people that were 97 and 98 years old. You think about it. They were here when Jesse James was robbing trains. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
It's funny. We should talk about that. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Atlanta this weekend. I went to a wedding, and on the way down, I stopped at Buc-ee's, and.
Or Buckeyes.
Either one. And I came out, and the thought that was in my head was, my granny or my dad and mom, what would they think of a store this size?
They had the gas on the bottles.
Oh, it was just extraordinary. And this was 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, just packed, and every 150 gas pumps or whatever the number was, they were all full. And the advances we made in so many ways.
Well, that place
It's a fascinating world.
You know, that's like going to, it takes you about, if you want to spend some time there, you can spend 45 minutes and not get bored at all.
You can spend 45 minutes and $45 in a heartbeat.
I never can figure out what to eat because they've got so many, you know, they got, it's like eating a Piccadilly or something. It's just, which one do I get?
Yeah, you can have a wide. There's a wide selection there.
Was there 23 pumps or something like that?
I think the one I stopped at had 125.
God, can you believe that?
125 gas pumps.
Golly.
I think the one in Sevierville has 150, but I'm not sure about
They
that.
say they like to be 100 miles away. Now, can you imagine somebody thinking that far ahead? It looks like they would think, hey, what if everybody gets an electric car? What are we going to do with all these pumps? I bet you somewhere they got a plan B.
I'm pretty sure they have a plan B. They seem to be pretty wise about looking to the future, and I bet they figure it out.
Did you see that that movie last year, Mr. Rogers?
I did.
Do you remember the part where he said, always in times of trouble, look for the people that are trying to help? Remember that scene?
Mm-hmm. I do.
That's what you're trying to do here with the Cancer Society.
Well, yeah, I am trying to help. We have, I've been in Cleveland long enough to say this without any hesitation whatsoever. Cleveland and Bradley County, extraordinary community made up of so many people who are willing to help a neighbor. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be a neighbor they know. They will help raise money. They will show up and clean up a yard. They will clean up a creek. And we have lots of those kinds of people dedicated to the American Cancer Society. This is our 31st anniversary in Cleveland and Bradley County.
Golly, I had no idea.
31 years. I didn't know it until I was doing some research. So we'll celebrate our 31st birthday of the ACS Relay for Life this year on April 20th in downtown Cleveland when we have our relay.
Now, explain how that works. I know that on that Saturday morning they have some streets blocked off, maybe, or some traffic. So how many? Does they have a relay for life in every community, or is it just here?
No, there are about 2,500 relays across the country. There were about 2,500 or so in 2023, so there's a lot. But not every community has them. For example, Hamilton County does not have a relay for life, but we do. Now, some communities don't have a relay. They do something else to raise money for the American Cancer Society. But you're right. On the morning of April 20th, that's a Saturday, the Cleveland Police Department will put up the barricades and block off basically the square that's around downtown.
Just a starting point, I guess.
And so we use the plaza stage there sort of as ground zero, if you will, where all of the things basically happen. And then we mark off, we use the parking spaces sort of as an outline for what we call our campsites. And we'll have teams from all kinds of different places. Peyton's, for example, Tenova Healthcare, Wesley Memorial Church, and I don't mean to leave anybody out, Food City, Coca-Cola, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they will come in and they'll set up tents and they'll serve food and they'll have decorations and we'll have music and we do all kinds of things. We'll have vendors and they'll sell everything from candles to homemade goods and so forth and so on. We have a kids row that we put up. And we're doing we did some new things last year that we're going to do again this year, maybe a couple of new things this year. Last year, I'm going to brag on our volunteers just a little bit, but last year at our 30th Relay for Life in Cleveland, Bradley County, we raised over $170,000. And the luminary ceremony is, if you've been to a relay before, we take the small white paper sacks, and individuals or families, they will either decorate or we'll decorate for them. They'll sponsor that, and quite often it's in memory of mom, or it's in memory of my dad, or it's in memory of my grandmother or my papaw, and they'll decorate it. And we fill it with sand and put a candle in it, and then we line the streets. And that night, about 9 o'clock. We read off a list of names of all those in memory of, and then we also read off a list of names in honor of, that is, people who are currently fighting cancer. And so we had 358 sponsors last year, the most we've ever had. And so that combined with, we had our first ever last year, we had a survivor choir. We had cancer survivors who came up on stage. We had about 35. And we got them up on stage and they all sang Amazing Grace together. And it was really, it was sweet, touching, and moving. And I'd like to get 100 cancer survivors up there this year. Now, last year we had another first-time thing. We had, and I brought my box with me, we had the good people, Scotty Mayfield and all the folks up at Mayfield Dairy up in Athens.
Well, what a great guy.
When I said that about your mom earlier, being a true Southern lady, Scotty Mayfield is a true
They
Southern.
could have gotten together.
He's a true Southern gentleman.
He really is.
True Southern gentleman. But anyway, I called them up last year and I said, I got an idea. They said, tell me about it. I told them about it. They said, we'll do it. So we had the first ever Mayfield Dairy ice cream sandwich eating contest. So my goal originally was, let's get 10 people to raise $500 each to go to fighting cancer, or as I say it now, to defeating cancer. And we had about 10 contestants registered in the first about 10 days. We ended up on the day of the event, 23 contestants. Had them lined up all across the front of the courthouse there. You got to eat for 5 minutes. We had each one a bag of 8 ice cream sandwiches, the full size ones, not them little bitty ones, but the full size. And so we rang the bell and they started. And in 5 minutes, we had 2 people, Carla Stitchfield and John Squires from Cleveland State. They ate 19 full-size sandwiches in 5 minutes.
Think about that.
And the crowd was going crazy. So was Mr. Mayfield. Well, it just so happens I thought, there is a possibility we have a tie, and if we do, what do I do? So I had a 1-minute eat-off. So we put them
So they had to eat again?
We had 1 more minute. So we put some more out there. They ate 4 more, and then like in the boxing world, they said no mas. You know, no more. 23 in 6 minutes. So we gave them all. We had a special belt made. You know, when you look at WWE wrestling,
Conor McGregor.
They have that big big championship. We had one of those made. ACS, ice cream sandwich eating champion. So we had to get another one made, but we did. So they both walked away as champions. So this year we're having the second annual Mayfield Dairy ice cream sandwich eating contest. And I've got about 6 people already committed, but I'm looking for volunteers. It's a lot of fun. We had both school systems represented last year. We had the Cleveland Police Department represented last year. Had the president of Blood Assurance come up and be with us in Cleveland last year for it. We had one of the doctors from the anesthesia department at Tenova Healthcare with us. We had Ken Webb, city council member. You know Ken?
Great guy.
In fact, Ken last year, first person I went to and said, Ken, I've got this idea. Would you be a member? He said, absolutely. Right off the bat, jumped into it. Tommy Ledford, County Commissioner Tommy Ledford. Tommy Ledford, I went to him second. He jumped right in and said, absolutely. So we had a whole host of people. So we're trying to recruit them again. I've got another idea that we're working on right now. We've got a commitment from the Sheriff's Department, and Jeff, the director of the Bradley Fire and Rescue, he's already said yes. Within this contest, I'm going to set up another table in the middle, and it's going to be for first responders. So I've got the Sheriff's Department locked in. I've got the Bradley Fire and Rescue locked in. I need the Cleveland Police Department, the Bradley County EMS, and the Cleveland Fire Department. And so we're going to have them compete within the whole contest. The winner of the first responders, we'll have a separate trophy for them.
That's going to add a little competition.
So that's a little competition. I'm just tossing it out there. The Sheriff's Department's already said, absolutely, Dewayne, we're going to help you fight cancer. And Jeff and the folks at Bradley Fire and Rescue have already said, yes, we're going to help you fight cancer. I need the other 3 to jump on board. And then some more folks. And, whether you think you can eat the most or not, come down with us. Have some fun, help us raise some money, see your friends and neighbors, and help us defeat cancer. That's really the end of the day. That's really what we're talking about. So
Now, what's the relay for? You still have the people that just walk?
We do. The relay started in 1985. There was a doctor out in Washington State, Dr. Gordon Klatt, and he had a lot of patients with cancer. He decided he wanted to do something for them. So he was the first relay. He ran, if I remember this right, Overnight, he ran 83 miles around a track. Just him. And the next year, they had 19 teams that said, hey, we want to be a part of this and help you raise more money.
So he was doing it kind of by himself?
He was doing it by himself. One man with an idea that he was fully engaged and sold out, he did it. And now all these many years later, from 1985, I think just in Cleveland, I did a rough calculation a few weeks ago, just in our 31 years, we've raised somewhere in the vicinity of $2.3 million, give or take, just in Cleveland and Bradley County to fight cancer.
Well, that's incredible.
And that's used for research. We also, the ACS has their Hope Lodges in the state of Tennessee, HOP, Hope Lodges. Families that have someone who, especially children who are going through cancer.
Oh, boy.
They can stay there, they'll go for their treatment. A lot of resources that are available through the ACS, education support, caregiver support. But the relay, part of it, in the old days, you may remember this, but we quite often would have it either at Cleveland High School, up at Walker Valley,
I think
Bradley.
my wife walked in a few hours.
Absolutely. We used to always have a team at Bradley
Yeah.
Hospital. And we would walk, and these were back in the days when the relay was 24 hours. So we'd start
Like it's 8.
exactly, and we'd go all night until the next morning. And the
Golly.
goal was to every team to at least have one member on the track for the full 24 hours. Now you trade out.
That's where the relay comes in.
That's
I
where the
guess.
relay
Yeah.
came in. Now we're not a 24-hour relay anymore. Things change, people change. So we'll start about 2 p.m. that day, and at 9 o'clock we'll have the luminary ceremony. And once that finishes, then that signifies the end of the relay. And in between all of that,
So the relay starts at 2?
at 2.
Not in the mornings anymore.
No, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. And teams start setting up at noon, and it sort of builds throughout the day. The official formal opening will probably be about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. That's when the local officials will come and welcome everybody. We'll have an opening prayer. We'll have the presentation of our nation's colors. We'll have the national anthem. We'll introduce all the teams. We'll thank the sponsors. And then the first lap is always walked from the beginning, always walked by the survivors. So they'll walk the first lap, and we have cheerleaders and others clapping and whistling and encouraging them. After they finish theirs, then the caregivers walk, and then the teams walk, and then we're officially underway. And then we'll do the Survivors Choir. We'll do the second annual Mayfield Dairy Ice Cream Sandwich Eating Contest. We have a huge auction. And so we'll have all that. We've got some surprises, some things that we're working on. I confirmed 2 weeks ago that the Arnold Elementary School Trash Can Band is going to be a part of our entertainment. They are absolute spectacular children, spectacular students, and they're just so exciting. And so what we're trying to do is we want it to be a family festival. People come down, bring your kids. It's just a lot of fun.
Similar to the block party. It's similar.
Absolutely, in terms of family things and entertainment. Now, I will brag just a minute here. After all that work last year, all the good people who supported us, sponsors, teams, captains, volunteers, survivors, caregivers, etc., we ended up being chosen by the American Cancer Society as the #1 relay in the state of Tennessee. Now, that's a big honor.
That's a big one.
That's a big honor in the entire state of Tennessee. Well, come to find out, they also chose us as the #1 relay in the Southeast. Sort of like being the SEC football champion. Big bragging rights.
Yeah.
Well, we thought, boy, that's a great year. We raised a lot of money. We supported a lot of survivors. We hugged on some caregivers. We had a good year. They came back to us and said, oh, one more thing. Out of the 2,500 relays in the country, you've been chosen the best relay in the United States of America. Out of all those relays. So we were the best in Tennessee, the best in the Southeast, and the best in the country. And all the credit goes to all those volunteers who worked
That's
hard.
enough to advertise it right there.
I'm telling you, they made phone calls, they prayed for us, they visited, they wrote letters, they sent emails. If some of my volunteers were in the room with us, I always use this simple little word, 3 letters, 1 word, and I encourage them to use it every day when they're working on things like this on behalf of fighting and defeating cancer. It's a little word called ASK. A-S-K, ask. Just ask. Ask people, will you be on a team? Will you start a team? Would you like to be in the ice cream contest? Are you a survivor? Would you like to register so we can honor you at the relay? Would you just like to come down and bring your kids and have something to eat and play a game? Would you just like to come down and see what we're doing? Just ask people to be a part of it. We're not pushy, but we are fully engaged because we understand the importance of what we're doing in terms of moving this needle forward to improve diagnosis, to improve treatment, to help people feel better if they're a survivor. You know, I get the good fortune of being able to speak to a lot of groups, and they always ask me, you know, well, what can we do? The number one thing people can do for us, pray for us. Pray for us that we're thinking clearly. Pray for us that we're saying the right things. Pray for us that we're doing the right things. And the second thing is, just get involved with us somehow. Whatever you want to do. Dip your toe in the relay water and find out whether you like it. Now, if you've been doing it for a while, jump on in. We got plenty of jobs for everybody. Because a big event like this takes a lot of people, and I can't say enough about all of our leadership and all of our volunteers. They are absolutely outstanding people.
Who do people call to say, okay, I want to direct traffic or whatever?
If they want to call me, they can find me. We've also got a website where they can go register. It's relayforlife.org/BradleyTN. relayforlife.org/BradleyTN. And it'll tell you all about the relay, the date, the time, the place. Survivors can register there. Caregivers can register there. You can find more about being a team or a sponsor. Mm-hmm. But if somebody says to you, hey, Dee, how do I get in touch with that fellow who's talking about the relay? You put them in touch with me. I will try not to talk too long, but I will give them as much information as they can stand.
And you know, this has got to be helpful for the ones that are going through cancer, because they just can't talk about it or vent enough, probably, can they?
You know, I've learned this throughout the years, Dee, that there are times in life when you sit down with somebody else and they tell you something and it sort of just jostles your brain. Mm-hmm. I can't find a survivor yet who didn't sit down across from their doctor or their medical provider and the doctor said, you have cancer, whatever type it is. Mm-hmm. Where just for some period of time, you know, their eyes would spin like in the old cartoon, and their heart would really race and their brain would try to reconcile what they just heard.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. That's not a time for a person to be alone. And that's one thing that we try to do through the American Cancer Society. And this year's theme ties into that. This year's theme is the International Festival of Hope. We want people to know that there is hope. It's a struggle. It's a battle. But we want to be unified in trying to get people connected to resources, education, other people, have someone to talk to who's been through a similar thing as you. The American Cancer Society is really strong in all of those areas. Their literature, their programs, their educational materials are world class in terms of helping people understand, okay, here's what I've been told, what do I do now? And other survivors are great resources. People who have fought the battle or are fighting the battle. I've seen survivors sit down with a person who's a new cancer diagnosis, if you will, and they will sit down with them and they will talk to them. They will listen to them. They will try to say, okay, well, here's what I did for my next step. Mm-hmm. We have many opportunities to do good things in this world.
That may be as important as you know what I'm saying, as far as helping the people that have it.
I remember we were at a relay in another town last year, and so the survivors were getting their T-shirt and their medallion that we give them, much like we do here. And I'd ask the question, well, how long have you been a cancer survivor? And you get all kinds of, whether it's a year, 5 or 10, and some people 20 and longer than that. And there was one lady who stepped up and said, I was diagnosed last week.
Come on.
And I'm just telling you, Dee, could hurt a pin drop. Because everybody in there who was a survivor knew exactly at that moment what that woman was experiencing and feeling down to her core. And I watched it from the stage, I watched those people rally to that woman and embrace her and take her in their arms, physically and otherwise, to say, we got you. We're going to help you. I can't say enough about survivors, and I can't say enough about caregivers, because the work they do for one another, the work they do internally for themselves, the relay is an opportunity for us, those of us who aren't in their situation today, to simply look them in the eye, pat them on the shoulder and say, God bless you.
Call me if you need me.
You are one strong person. You know, there's an old word that we used to use, and you may remember there used to be a newspaper called Grit.
Do I?
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I delivered them. Not as good as you did.
There you go. But I use that word a lot when it comes to survivors and caregivers. They've got grit.
They have to.
They absolutely have to, because sometimes it's a long and a very painful battle. But they just have the wherewithal, whether they get that from their God or my God or somewhere else through their family and friends, wherever they find it, boy, they are an example to all of us. It's a very powerful thing, and you know, for me, I'm honored to just be a part of it. The folks I get to work with in terms of volunteers.
How long have you been involved with it?
Oh, I don't know, just a little while, a few decades now.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a powerful thing, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, but a friend of this community, Shelley Cody, passed away this past year.
That's right. Just a few weeks ago, I guess.
That's exactly right. And Shelley and Robbie, they were actively involved in the Relay for Life for so many years. It didn't matter what you called on them to do, they jumped right into it. And Shelley has the record as chairperson as raising, if I remember right, $351,000 in 1 year. She was the chairperson that year.
Dang, that was.
So, yeah, that's a whole boatload of money. That's exactly right. So there are lots of people, and we don't look for folks who have. You don't have to. If you don't think you have any talents, you have more talents than you think you do. Because what you said earlier, we need people to. At the end of the night, we need people to make sure that we've picked up all the garbage. Because one of our commitments is, at the Relay downtown or wherever we've been, we want to make sure that that property is as clean or cleaner when we leave as when we got there, because we want them to invite us back next year. So, and we need people to help set up tables, set up chairs, set up tents. I need people to help put together luminary bags and put them out and clean them up at the end of the night. Sometimes I just need people to say, this survivor doesn't know where the survivor tent is. Would you walk them over to the survivor tent? And then come back here, and if somebody else needs assistance. We need all kinds of folks who can help us. And so anybody who wants to do anything to help us defeat cancer, we'd love to have you. We will work you no harder than we think you can stand. But if you're up to it, we'll work you pretty hard, because we believe it's that important.
And it's just half a day on Saturdays.
Yeah.
On Saturday, unless you're doing something in preparation.
Exactly. We have the full committee. We meet at least once a month.
Throughout the year?
Well, pretty much throughout the year, because we finished up the Relay last year and went right into the planning of this one, selecting the date.
While it's on your fresh on your mind.
That's exactly right. So we don't take many weeks off. Some of us don't take any time off because we got to start getting material ready for the next year. And so we meet at Wesley Memorial Church at least once a month in the evening at 6:30. And we get updates on how many teams have you talked to, how many sponsors do we have secured, how are we looking in terms of recruiting survivors, and how many luminaries are sponsored, and what about entertainment, and what about all these different kinds of things that go into a big special event. And we talk about all of those and try to make sure that everybody's informed. Seldom does a day go by when many of our volunteers aren't working on some aspect of the relay. And so communication is really important for us, because we're all disparate locations and we're working on different things. Again, the thing about the boat, we need to all make sure we're rowing in the right direction. And so we try to keep people informed as we move this along.
How many is on the board?
Well, we probably have about 15 or 20 people on what we call the leadership part of our committee. But at any given meeting, we might have 30 or 40 people there. And
it's run like a pretty good business, isn't it?
Well, we take a lot of business
Yeah.
concepts and apply those because it's such a big undertaking. And the one thing that's really important to me is on the day of relay, I don't want a survivor or a caregiver or a family or a team or a sponsor to show up and go, well, this is the most disorganized thing I've ever seen. It's a wonder they do any good at all. I want them to show up and they go, where's my tent? It's supposed to be right there. What's going to be the food? Well, here's all of our menu for the day. What kind of music are you going to have? Here's the agenda for the day. Where the survivor tent? It's right over there. We'd be glad to escort you to it. Where about the kid games? They're lined up over there. We like to be organized, and fortunately, we have a lot of people who help us in those areas. Because again, when people get there, I want them to have fun. I want them to learn more about cancer. By the time they leave, I want them to know more about cancer than they did before they got there. I also want them to spend some money, whether it's at the auction or buying a hamburger or a beignet or a chicken sandwich or whatever it might be. And all that money goes to help us defeat cancer. We have a lot of folks who work really hard, and I'm proud to be associated with them.
Boy, I tell you what, I had no idea, just to be honest with you.
Well, I'm glad.
I had no idea that it was such a big organization.
It is. And I'm not, I'm here to talk about the Cancer Society, but over my years living here in Cleveland, I've had the good fortune of being involved with the American Heart Association, the March of Dimes, the Alzheimer's Association, and so many other worthy causes. And I would simply say this to people. If you haven't picked out a cause to be involved with, whether it's your church or another charity, just pick one. Get involved with somebody. I'm also on the board of directors for Blood Assurance, and getting people to donate blood is really hard because people are scared of needles and some other reasons, but that's a big one.
Yeah.
But we have so many wonderful opportunities in this community that we call our hometown. And if everybody did just a little bit more, I always like to think how far we could advance and be even better, a better hometown than we even are. I love it here. I'm always pleased to tell people that I'm from Cleveland and my kids were raised here.
And if you're looking to meet new friends or have a community, what better thing to do than to join an organization that's everybody's there for another reason besides just themselves.
Absolutely. It was extraordinary to me when we announced at our meeting that we had won the state award and the regional award and the national award. To a person in that audience, all of our volunteers, you could see it in their face. They were honored to be chosen. They were humbled by the selection. But there's not a person in that room who shows up because they want to be recognized. They show up because this fight is important to them. They show up because defeating cancer is a particularly specific and important cause for them. They show up because either they or someone in their life is fighting the battle or has succumbed to the battle, and they want to do something about it. They don't show up for awards. They show up to fight. They show up to win. They show up to defeat cancer. They're powerful people.
That's incredible. Like I said, I had no idea it was such a big organization.
We're going down, Ken Webb has helped, and on March the 11th, Cleveland City Council is going to declare April 20th Relay for Life Day in Cleveland. So
Has Ken got it passed?
Ken's working on it right now, and so we get a lot of support from the local political leadership. And I was talking about the first responders earlier. They've been so good throughout the year. I'll tell you, I remember this throughout all the many years. One of the most powerful images for me was, it'd be so hot, people out there in short pants and t-shirts, and they're sweating, and you'd see firemen out there with their axe, full gear, walking that track. Walking that track in honor of or in memory of somebody. They weren't complaining about a thing because they understood the battle was more important than whatever challenge they might be facing with some sweat. I've seen so many wonderful, wonderful caregivers and survivors throughout the year. They could barely make it from their car to the platform. They could barely make it from the sidewalk to the track. But again, their courage and grit, if it didn't encourage you, you weren't paying attention. I told somebody the other day, sometimes for me, when I see those folks doing what they do, remember that wonderful scene in The Grinch, when the Grinch, his heart, it finally grows 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes at a relay, and if you pay attention quite often, multiple times at a relay, you'll see an interaction between 2 people, and it will make your heart grow stronger because you absolutely understand somebody just got a word of encouragement that may make a difference today, but it also may make a difference in their life. It's a beautiful thing to be around. For me, it's just a gift to be given that opportunity to be involved with these folks. They're great.
They have to be very strong people that deal with that and come out of it, and even people that's got family members that are going through it. My grandmother went through it, and she wrote a real story about dealing with cancer. You know, it was it's terrible.
Mm-hmm. We were at, last year we were at downtown Cleveland. The year before that, the friendly folks out at First Baptist Church Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
they allowed us to use their campus. And Pastor Easley out there is a cancer survivor, and he had written a book about it. The first time I met the man, he was so gracious and so kind to us. He gave me a copy of his book. And what we've talked about today, he sort of captured in that book about, I remember the moment they said the word cancer to me. And about, how do I reconcile what's going to happen in my life now? But lots of folks have gone through that, and some are in the midst of the journey right now. And again, that's part of what we do, is we want to try to help these folks be strong enough to get through the journey.
Well, it's certainly. Do you send the money up to the organization? I know it goes to a good cause, but is that? I mean, that's it goes
Yes.
to a real deal.
It goes to the American Cancer Society, and I'll forget the exact number, but I think it's somewhere above 90% of the money raised.
That's
That is,
incredible for
90 cents
nonprofit.
out of every dollar goes to what we're talking about: cancer research, supporting survivors, supporting caregivers, educational materials, places like the Hope Lodge. They take those dollars and they squeeze them to make sure that we're making a difference for the fight that we're fighting.
Now that the president of the American Cancer Society, what's his name? Starts with a B.
Yeah, you've asked me a question I don't remember right now.
I've watched him on some of his just his talks, and you can tell he really cares. It just comes out in everything he says.
Yeah. I think you find, again, I've had the pleasure of being able to work with a lot of different health organizations throughout the years. My experience has been that people who either volunteer or work for these organizations, quite often what you find is they have a personal reason for being there. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, best friend at church, whatever it might have been. They have some kind of direct connection, and that's how they get involved. And quite often, that's where we find our volunteers. Is somebody will say, hey, my grandmother has cancer, can I get involved? Sure, come on, what do you want to do? Well, I'd like to help with this. Okay, well, let's teach you how we do that. And we put them to work. And so we try not to pigeonhole people who want to volunteer in certain jobs, but if they walk in and say, well, I just want to help, I don't know what to do, we look at our task list and we say, we need some help in this area. How about that? Okay, I'll do that. Because most of these volunteers, they don't come in, they're not looking for awards, they're not looking for recognition. They want to come in and make a difference. And we want to be the opportunity for them to help make a difference.
This is a disease that affects everyone, and everyone should be involved in finding the cure and helping.
There will be, in 2024, this year, there will be 2 million brand new cancer diagnoses. 2 million new ones this year. Now, when I say that out loud, some people go, well, wow, that's terrible. And it is. On the plus side, on the positive side, Many of those will be diagnoses that are caught early, so treatment can be implemented early, and the possibility of extending their life greatly increases. Now, some of those are going to be caught later, and there's going to be a bit of a more challenge there. But we're better on the diagnostic side. We're better on the treatment side. We're not out of the woods yet. There is a lot of work left to be done to defeat cancer. And that's why that's why I and the American Cancer Society, we need a lot more volunteers to be involved in some way. If somebody wants to put together a team out there, it's not hard. If somebody wants to be a sponsor, we make it easy. If somebody wants to volunteer and help set up tables and chairs, we'd be glad to have you. If somebody wants to help us find some entertainment, we'd be glad to have you. If a survivor wants to register, go to that website, come down that day. We want to give you a t-shirt. We want to give you a medallion. We want to say how thankful we are to have you. And I mentioned the survivor choir earlier. Mm-hmm. If you show up and you can't sing a lick, don't worry about it. We don't have a hurdle. Mm-hmm. That old thing in the South we like to say, it doesn't matter if you can carry a tune in a bucket. Yeah. We don't care. It's like church singing. God don't care. Just sing. And we just want people to come down and sing and celebrate the fight and eventually the defeat of cancer.
I know one thing, cancer has really got an opponent now. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks
it's
for the
been
time.
great.
I appreciate it a great deal.